All right, welcome back, everybody. Brian Schwager here for part two of my presentational series on immunity. Remember, the purpose of these presentations is to empower you to take control of your wellness and movement. And in particular, with series three, is to empower you with the knowledge to take control of your immune system. So let's pick up where we left off yesterday. If you remember yesterday, we ended up talking about the terrain theory versus the germ theory. And this is going to be quite interesting, but I want to go back for just a moment and make sure we understand how important these cells are, and then to draw some examples so that we can close on part one. When a person is infected with the flu virus, their immune system swings into action using a host of different cells to attack the invaders. So here are some of the cells that do that. A type of white blood cell called a macrophage recognizes foreign materials like viruses and attempts to swallow them up. Other white cells have even more specialized jobs. For example, B cells, go back up here to the top, B cells make protein antibodies that attach to the virus, effectively labeling it as dangerous so other cells like T cells can recognize and destroy it. The B cell makes protein antibodies, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, that attach to the virus, bacteria, or harmful chemical in your body, so that other cells can recognize it as bad. Isn't that interesting? Remember, your immune cells are smart. They're doing this job without you telling it what to do. This is what they mean by innate immunity. This is sort of what I talk about when it comes to the difference between your peripheral nervous system and, or what I should say, when I talk about the autonomic nervous system. In part two, I mentioned the autonomic nervous system because it works automatically without my direct input. So in other words, like your heart, it beats 24/7 without you thinking about it, doesn't it? Well, that neurological pathway is the same pathway these cells, these immune cells, are operating. They're on a whole different pathway, and they have built-in little brains, if you will. They actually do, because the outside of the cell is a membrane. So they have their own way of thinking. And this way of thinking is a neurological response. So just like I can use my brain to move my fingers, that's a mind-body connection. So that's not an automated response. That is something I have to deliberately do, right? Your brain can also do that subconsciously, right, to make other things happen. All right, so what I'm getting at is this. We need to recognize that these immune cells and your immune system is a circulating nervous system. Now, this was taught to me by a psychoneuroimmunologist. It's a circulating nervous system. It thinks, it acts, it remembers. Remember how I was saying it has all these potentials? And where did that potential come from? Who taught it this? Right? Deep topic. Who taught it what to do? Who taught the B cells to do all this? Your body did. Well, what's your body? It's a cybernetic organism, a system of systems. It has a CPU called your brain. And all that information was downloaded before you got here. So when you were conceived and your brain was developing, the consciousness of that brain had this information already built in, immune system. And then when you come into the world through neurodevelopment, you develop through a sort of a day-by-day process or an evolutionary process, you develop immunity. You develop patterns. So when the baby starts crawling across the ground, it sticks its fingers in its mouth full of dirt. That's how your body starts to build herd immunity. It needs an action. So the baby takes the dirt from having its hands on the floor, sticks it in its mouth. There's the action. Now the reaction is your body saying, oh, we have a foreign invader. We need to build antibodies, right? An immune response to take care of that, because otherwise the baby will get sicker and sicker. That's innate immunity. That's why when we were younger, when I was younger, I'm 60 years old, we would have smallpox parties. Somebody in the family would get the smallpox, like let's say I got chicken pox, rather, it's not smallpox. I got the chicken pox and I had all those little bumps all over my body, where let's say my sister, she caught it, but she didn't have as many. And then my brother may have caught it, but he didn't have as many. But what we did by giving it to my brother and sister is now they have the antibodies to recognize it going forward. And then later on, when my sister has children, or if I would have had kids, that would have been built into my cellular memory. You see how this works? We don't want to screw that up, and we've done a good job screwing it up. Now, why am I bringing all this up, this innate immunity? Because these cells know what to do. It's a circulating nervous system. They have a mind all their own, and all we're doing by getting sick and getting sicker, which is what we've done over the last 4 decades, is we have gotten in the way with what we're breathing, what we're drinking, what we're thinking, and what we're eating when it comes to the immune system. We've gotten in the way. And we're going to talk about, these 4 principles: emotional, biochemical, nutritional, and even movement, physical. We're going to talk about how these things can get in the way and make your immune system worse. So if you want to get prepared to build your immune system, you don't just do that before the fall and winter. You prepare it and you maintain it all year long. Yeah, you'll have your ebbs and flows. But if you keep climbing and your immune system gets weaker and weaker, disease goes up and up, rather. So if disease goes up and up and your immune system goes down and down, well, what do we have? We have a problem. So these B cells make protein antibodies that attach to viruses. So it's like a signal. Now we go down here to the NK cells. They are filled with a potent chemical, which is lethal to the foreign invader. So this little cell here, these little cells, there's millions of them. These little cells here have their own vaccine, God-given vaccine. Who created the body? Right? Were they dumb? No, I don't think so. This is a really interesting organism. It is a cybernetic, self-thinking, self-regulating organism, but we as humans have gotten in our own way. NK cells have this potent chemical, and it's lethal when it injects it into the foreign invader. Remember your foreign invaders. It injects it into whatever the foreign invader is, coordinates their attack on an infection. The cells involved in the body's immune response need to communicate with each other. What if the communication is down? Then response is down. So let's use an example. An ambulance is on its way to somebody that called it. So somebody's having a heart attack and the ambulance is on its way. But it gets stuck in traffic and it can't call the people or the firehouse. So now the people don't have the communication. Like, why is it taking them so long? Number one. And number two, even if it could call, it's saying it's stuck in traffic. So its response time is weakened, isn't it? Which is not a good thing. What about yourselves? What if there's no communication or the lack thereof? And what if they're really slow in getting there? I want cell response to be like this. How do I get my cells to respond faster, Brian? Change your lifestyle. They do this by releasing a set of proteins that serve as chemical messengers. Okay, so here we got the messenger, right? So you got a cell phone, right? And you dial the phone, and then there's a frequency that shoots out to a tower, up to a satellite, down to another tower, and onto your friend's phone who you're calling. It's a messenger. The frequency is the messenger, opens up the line of communication. So the phone rings and you answer it, and there's somebody on the other line. So now we have communication. The cells work the same way. These little proteins are chemical messengers. They're as important as these cell towers. If a cell tower goes down, you cannot make that connection to the satellite. Now, these proteins, let's go to the bottom of this list, are the cytokines. They tell immune cells what to do and also tell the body to produce more of them to help deliver the knockout blow or infection. Let me repeat. These proteins, called cytokines, tell immune cells what to do and also tell the body to produce more of them to help deliver a knockout blow to the infection, the bacteria, etc., etc. Whatever the foreign invader is, it is sending that message. Is everything I'm teaching you in this presentation is to enhance that communication. You already got these cells. You don't have to go out to the store and buy these. You got to feed them. You got to love them. You got to keep them clean. You got to wash them, keep them in a nice, clean environment. But that's all you got to do. God gave you everything. But in severe cases of the flu, and now we're going to go back up here, in severe cases like the viral outbreak, cytokine production can grow out of control. And like Judy Mikovits has taught me, what we're seeing out there is a cytokine storm being produced because of something that I can't mention. If you want to know, you contact me one-on-one. But it's creating a cytokine storm, which is creating an inflammatory response. And I don't know if you know this, but when I look at inflammation in the body, like a joint that's inflamed, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, anything ending in itis means inflammation. And what happens if you get inflammation in your arteries? That creates a blockage. And what do blockages have to do with heart attacks? Everything. If we have too many of these cytokines floating around, we get a cytokine storm. We don't want to overstimulate the nervous system. The reason I brought this up was to show you about cell-mediated response, or the response time of how fast my immune system works, and why is it so slow? Why is it so slow? Because your lifestyle is unhealthy. Bottom line. And again, when I talk about lifestyle, we're talking about the 4 principles, and the 4 principles are emotional health, how you handle stress, biochemical health, how you sleep, nutritional health, how you digest, what and when you eat and drink, and of course, the last one is physical health, how we move. When these principles are out of alignment, when you're out of balance, when you're not in harmony or homeostasis, we get inflammation. All right, so let's move on now. The germ theory. So how do we handle these little foreign invaders? Well, why don't we just attack them? If there is a pollution, virus in my body, why don't we just attack the pollution? Why don't we just attack the virus? Well, that's what your immune system is doing. What can you do? Well, we're going to get to that. So this is where it all went wrong. Louis Pasteur was a French microbiologist and chemist. Now, he wasn't an idiot. He was a smart guy. However, he made a mistake here. He postulated that most infectious diseases are caused by germs. This was known as the germ theory of disease, and it became the foundation for the science of microbiology and a cornerstone of modern medicine. This theory claims that external germs are the cause of infectious disease. All right, now let's bring this to light here. We are constantly breathing in some 14,000 germs and bacteria per hour. Wow. It's like, are you serious, Brian? Yes, 14,000. You heard that term right. If germs are so harmful, then why aren't we all dead by the end of the day? Think about that. We should all be dead at the end of the day or the end of the week. Classic biology, based on the work of Pasteur, relies on the idea that disease comes from germs that invade the body from the outside. I'm not saying that these little germs aren't causing problems. Not saying that at all. They are. Well, I mean, if I'm breathing in, I mean, it's early in the morning here, so maybe I got maybe 7,000, 5,000 germs already I've breathed in. But the difference is my immune system is already taking care of it. Pasteur believed that it is germs in the air that contribute to illness. What you will learn is that it is actually the cellular environment that mainly contributes to the proliferation of illness and disease. And I'm about to get into what that means, cellular environment. We're going to teach you what that is. The flu epidemic in 1918 that ravaged the planet, which killed 30 million people worldwide, it would occur in one home, but not the one next door, or it would occur in one family to one family member, but not the other. Well, let me run this by you again. The flu epidemic in 1918, which killed 30 million people, would occur in one home, but not the other, and would occur in one family member and not the other. I can prove that. Somebody is sick. I go to somebody's house for a gathering. Somebody in the house is sick. Okay, we all go back home. And I find out 2 days later, my sister's sick, but I'm not. She's like, well, why aren't you sick? I said, because I have an immune system that's doing its job. Or, okay, let's use the other example. Let's say we both go home and we both get sick. But I recover in 24 hours and she recovers in 7 days. See the difference? What's up with that? Why was it in one home and not the other when there were 30 million people dying from the flu epidemic in 1918? Do your homework, people. And I don't even know if you can find this information anymore. Okay, even the Great Plague of Europe, which they later confessed was due in part to unhealthy sanitary conditions. How are we living in the 1800s? How are we living at the beginning of the 1900s? Did we have sewage systems in place? No, man. I mean, we had outhouses. And even before then, living in the city, forget about it. They were tossing their garbage, if you will, right out onto the street. They were everything. We didn't have what we have. Look at the sewage systems you have now, the toilets, the sinks. We have better sanitary conditions. We use different kinds of soap. We eat better. Back then, they didn't know any of this. They had poor diets. They were under a lot of stress. Do you think there were a lot of stress during the Depression in the 1930s? Do you think there were a lot of stress during the World War in Europe? And during some of the other wars that preceded that? Do you think they had sanitary conditions back then? So how dirty do you think their environment was? We have two types of environments we're talking about here. We have a people environment. This is my home. And then I have my cellular environment, which is my organism. Both of them have to stay clean, don't they? Pasteur also gave rise to the development of antibiotics, which we would later see that they created challenges to the digestive system. Remember, the digestive system is home for 75% of your immune system. Interesting, right? So I have a family member that has a very, very compromised immune system, and they have an infection. And they asked me, do you think that this person should take antibiotics? I said, yes, there's a time and place for it. But I said, when we're done with the duration of those antibiotics, then we got to go in there and refurbish the good bacteria, because when you use an antibiotic, yeah, you'll kill all the germs, whatever's infecting the body, it will kill it all, but it'll kill also all the good bacteria. I think a lot of people understand that now, don't they? But for me, if I get an infection, I'm not taking any antibiotics. I very seldom get an infection, but I do every once in a while get a little infection going on, depending what I've eaten, and mostly what I've eaten. Because if I go off my healthy eating plan, I could end up with a little digestive infection. Well, I just clean it up. I use a purification program that I've been using for years, and I do it twice a year anyway. I clean it up. I clean up the mess. So after the party and you make a mess, you got to clean it up. Well, we'll get into this. But remember, your gut is 75% of your immune system. Again, you see the relevance to using a single external drug to combat illness and disease. For over 70 years, the medical system has used the archaic approach, which we as a population have paid a price for the convenience of health. People are just sick and tired. Why do I read all this? Because it has everything to do with the theory that is the germ, or it is these guys that are causing it. These guys can start the problem. But the only way these little foreign invaders will multiply in your body is if it's dirty. I'll show you this. Now, during the same era as Louis Pasteur, he had two contemporaries that were thinking things differently. And here they are. The two contemporaries were Dr. Claude Bernard, a French physiologist, and Dr. Antoine Béchamp, a professor of medicine and bacteriologist. Now, both of these gentlemen have more credentials than I listed here. They both believed disease was a condition of imbalances in the internal terrain of the body, or as Dr. Bernard called the milieu interior. Bernard and Béchamp focused on the context or environment in which germs lived, not just the germ. If you give the germ a home to live, trust me, it'll set up shop and you'll never get rid of them. Bernard believed it was the internal terrain that needed to remain clean in order to promote health and prevent illness. And for the remainder of this presentation, when I talk about the terrain, I'll be referring to it as the cellular environment, the environment where all cells live. Disease was a byproduct of imbalances to the interior environment. This is what Bernard concluded. The arterial blood and lymphatic systems, both fluid-rich environments, represent the biological terrains made up of 75% water. And the brain is made up of 80% water. It's all fluid-rich environment. These terrains play the most vital roles in cellular function and need to remain free of excess pollution or toxicity, ensuring that cells function at an optimal state. If cells lose their function, they gradually succumb to health challenges and disease. And this is where I cited this information from the book entitled The Immune Power Personality. So it's the imbalance of the terrain that creates the problem, not just the germ, not just these guys, these foreign invaders. Instead, it's the environment. And isn't it funny that your arteries and your lymphatic system, which are two different systems, fluid systems, they're separate from each other. They're not the same, but they help. The lymphatic system does help the blood. But your blood is rich with fluid, water. And here's a little something for you. The water in both of these systems, the arteries and the lymphatics, have a low surface tension, which means they have a high wetting angle. What does that mean, low surface tension, high wetting angle? Well, when you boil potatoes, first you have to bring the water up to a boiling temperature, don't you? Then you put the potatoes in, and before you know it, they're soft. How did that happen? Well, it's called osmosis. So osmosis means the water permeated the structure and got to the inside, which then softens it up. That's a low wetting angle, ladies and gentlemen. That's low, what they call a low surface tension. So it can transfer osmosisly across the membrane of that potato. In this case, we're talking about your little cell. Around your cell, we're going to show you this. You have a membrane. Things have to permeate through that membrane, that little smart brain around your cell. It has to be smart. It's trying to protect what's inside of it. It's like Fort Knox in there. You don't want people to rip off your gold. It has this ability based on the surface tension that's available. When the surface tension is high, you have less permeability. When the surface tension is low, you have more permeability. Why did God give us low surface tension in the body? So that things can move through the fluid. Remember, communication is all frequencies. Cells have to float. They move through that cellular environment. And when the cellular environment gets thick, like sludge, they call it rouleau. I believe that's how you pronounce it in French. It gets thick. You can't move things through it as efficiently. There slows down your cellular communication. There slows down your cellular response. You getting where I'm coming from on this? Are you getting some knowledge out of this? This is incredible. So it reduces cellular function, cellular environment, low wetting angle. And then we eat these products, these foods, and we drink this water that has a high wetting angle, and we screwed up the whole homeostasis of the fluid. Now it has a high wetting angle, so it makes everything a lot harder to work. When God designed the arteries and the lymphatic fluids, the blood and the lymphatic fluids, he designed it with a low wetting angle for that reason. Remember, he's not dumb, and your body is not dumb. Innately, it's not. We can definitely dumb it down. Does that term sound familiar? This will drive it home for you. So let's use a fish aquarium. Now, this is just a little fish bowl, but bear with me. Inside the body, it's mostly water, and it is vitally important that the water remain clean, oxygenated, and nourished, like a fish in an aquarium. It has to have a sustainable environment to live. When that environment gets toxic, we have low oxygen, deprived food, and other stuff that's in the water, it'll kill the fish. Here's the germ theory. Here's the terrain theory. Does that make sense? See, this is common sense once you look at it this way. When I've talked to people that have beat cancer, when I've talked to people without drugs, when I've talked to people who have beat hardening of the arteries or cardiovascular disease without drugs, read the book by Dr. Dean Ornish, Reversing Heart Disease Without Medication. In both of these examples, both of these people, whether they had the cancer or the artery or coronary heart disease, they went on a plant-based diet. They did cleanses and purification. They increased their water intake. They had no dairy, nothing that would coagulate, and they cleansed. Their immune system got strong. Sure, they took immune boosting supplements. They might have done vitamin C intravenously. They were on probiotics, some of them. Maybe some of them were cleansing their liver, which is a major detoxification organ, like your kidney, your appendix, and your spleen. They took care of these organs. They cleaned up the environment. And what happened to the cancers and disease? This is what I was interested in the 90s. This is what I got passionate about. I got excited. You can see I'm getting excited. So what's the secret to life? The cell is immortal. It is merely the fluid in which it floats, which degenerates. Dr. Alexis Carrel. Look at what we have here. We have a cell membrane. Impaired cellular communication is one of the most basic common denominators of disease. One disease, two causes. Toxins and deficiencies, says Dr. Raymond Francis, the author of the book, Never Be Sick Again. I met Dr. Raymond Francis. I read that book and I was blown away. I called him and I ended up doing a presentation with him. I invited him to Milwaukee and we did presentations on this to the public. Look at this. The cell, intracellular environment, has a negative charge so that it can draw in water, nutrients, oxygen, and it also draws in emotional thoughts. Remember what Dr. Candace Pert said. When you have a thought, you produce a chemical peptide with that thought, and your cell will pick it up. And it excretes cellular waste if it is working correctly. If your body is not in harmony, this process will not happen effectively and you will age faster, get diseases faster than the average person. All I'm doing is improving the quality of my life for the next 30 to 40 years. I know I'm going to die. You don't get off this planet without doing it, but I'm choosing to live my truth and to live with the best quality of life. And the better quality of life I have, the better I can participate in life and do what I'm supposed to do to serve others, which is what we're all here to do, is to serve, not serve the machine or the government, to serve a higher power. I digress. Getting this cell intracellular environment clean does take work. And once we get it operating efficiently, now we have defense networks in place. Now, the extracellular environment has a positive charge, like a battery, negative and positive, right? Draws energy. But when the positive charge outweighs the negative charge, we got a problem. So the cell begins to get weak because an overabundance of these foreign invaders. Decrease these foreign invaders by changing your lifestyle. Oh, I'm sorry. This isn't a foreign invader. This is an immune cell. It's about to go in and attack these guys. But enhance your immune cell response time and enhance each living cell, which we have 75 trillion of them in the body, by changing what you think, by changing and improving how you sleep, how you digest, what you eat, when you eat, what you drink, and how you move. Microbe is nothing, the terrain is everything. So he made this statement on his deathbed. The origin of the quote is attributed to Claude Bernard. That's what he was talking about when he said the microbe is nothing, the terrain is everything. Pasteur was recanting his germ theory. Treat the cause of the infectious illness, the underlying dysfunction of the host immunity. Excuse me. And the infection will leave on its own as the health of the patient's body returns. I quote that from The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. So here we have this famous Louis Pasteur, who created the germ theory, which then was opted into the medical education. Naturopathic physicians look at the terrain theory. I think of the book Sick and Tired. In that book, I got that book too in the late 90s, but in that book was all the information about the Great Lie. There's a book called, I think, The Great Lie, Pasteur. And then I got the a book. I had to send for it. I had to place quite a large deposit to read the book. I had to send it back, get my deposit back. But it was the memoirs of Florence Nightingale. If we just treat the germ, I'm not saying that you won't get better, but it keeps coming back. And with every time it comes back, it gets worse. Just like an injury. If you don't treat the cause, I can still get you better. I can get your back better, your knee better. But it's going to come back. But it's going to be worse because we didn't treat the cause. That's why people call me. I want to get to the cause of this. Well, if you want to get to the cause of illness and the cause of cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc., change the terrain. Change your terrain. Pasteur, the plagiarist. Pasteur instructed his family never to release his lab notes. After his grandson died in 1975, they were finally released. Gerald Geeson, a science historian, was among the first people to thoroughly review those notes. In 1995, which was ironically proclaimed the year of Pasteur, Geeson's article was published in the New York Times proclaiming that Pasteur had lied about his research on vaccines and germs, and that most of his ideas had been plagiarized from his contemporaries. His article, Pasteur's Deception, claimed that Pasteur was in the end a fraud. And it was proven. But they hid that. Why do you think illness and disease kept getting worse since the 1930s? You ever figure that out? More technology, more education came in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Disease kept going up. They all knew this. And it wasn't until holistic and complementary medicine made their headway in the early 70s. Nobody heard of them then. And then we fast forward to the 90s when I was getting into this education. And then I discovered this by listening to naturopaths and authentic virologists, microbiologists, immunologists, and other naturopathic physicians, energy workers, and others that had incredible information and education. All right, so in the next section, the next part, we're going to go into the lymphatic system, and then we're going to start covering the 4 principles. Now, I may have to go into a part 4 here, because this is incredible information. All right, so what did we learn today? We learned that it isn't the foreign invaders that is the problem. It wasn't the germs. It was actually the cellular environment. It was about enhancing your cellular environment, enhancing your terrain. Remember, the living cell has the ability to think and take in oxygen, nutrients, water, and expel waste products back in. And you'll learn where those waste products go. And that your immune cells, if they're working operatively and functionally and optionally, they will eat up all these foreign invaders. We learned today that the terrain is everything. And Pasteur, like he said on his deathbed, the terrain is everything, the germ is nothing. So empowering information today. Again, drink plenty of clean, pure water. Keep your mind right. I'm going to be giving you ways to do this. Eat right, clean, organic. Do not eat GMO. Move effectively unless you're compromised. We'll talk about how you should move when you're compromised, and practice the deep breathing that I showed you in part 1. And if you want to learn the deep breathing principles, go to my YouTube channel. I think I have a couple of instructional YouTube videos, or go to my blog and read about it. Get knowledgeable and then take action. Let's do something about this, because the next 2 to 5 years, those who do not have their immune system in place, beware. That's all I'm going to say right now. Just beware. I have credible information. Again, I was on 2 webinars yesterday. Please, please, please tell your friends about this series about immunity and send this to them. Let's get this information out far and wide. I'm here to share because I care, and that's what my service is all about. If you want to get a short consultation, or you want to go through my comprehensive consultation and get some wellness plan ideas in place, and you want to get an idea where your body is at, contact me. I can help you with that. Now, if you live outside of my geographical area, I can do a lot of this through Zoom, virtually, but the physical part I have to be there for. Maybe I can find somebody who does what I do in your geographical area. Remember, if I can't figure it out, I will find somebody that can. All right, this is Brian Schwager saying, have a great day. Stay empowered, stay passionate. Put a smile on your face. Know there's hope. Keep hope alive, everybody. Be well. Bye for now. Namaste.